The neon lights of Luna's diner flickered against the viewing windows of Earth Station Alpha, casting dancing shadows across the worn vinyl booths. Zara Nova wiped down the counter for the third time that hour, her tired eyes glancing at the clock above the coffee machine. It's 23 minutes until closing time, and still no sign of the evening rush slowing down. Her feet ached in the cheap shoes she'd bought from the thrift store, and her uniform smelled like grease and desperation. 3 jobs wasn't enough to cover her rent in the station's lower levels, but it was all she could manage while trying to save for trade school. The dream of becoming a starship engineer felt more distant every day. Table 6 needs a refill, called Mrs. Chen from behind the grill, her weathered hands flipping burgers with practiced efficiency. The elderly woman had given Zara this job when no one else would, and for that, Zara would be forever grateful. On it, Zara replied, grabbing the coffee pot and heading toward the booth in the corner. That's when he walked in. The stranger looked like he'd been sleeping in maintenance tunnels for a week. His dark hair was messy, his clothes wrinkled and ill-fitting. But something about the way he carried himself caught Zara's attention. Despite his shabby appearance, he moved with an odd sort of grace, like he was consciously trying to appear clumsy. He slid into the corner booth, the one with the loose cushion that Mrs. Chen kept meaning to fix. Zara approached with her practiced customer service smile, notepad ready. "Evening. What can I get you tonight?" The stranger looked up, and Zara felt her breath catch. His eyes were the most unusual shade of amber she'd ever seen, with flecks that seemed to shimmer in the diner's harsh lighting. For a moment, he seemed surprised by her question, as if no one had ever asked him what he wanted before. "I would like your finest meal," he said formally, his accent carrying traces of something she couldn't identify. "And perhaps some of that warm beverage that smells so pleasant." Zara raised an eyebrow. "You mean coffee? And our finest meal is probably the meatloaf special, but I wouldn't exactly call it fine." A small smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Then I shall have the meatloaf special and coffee, please." She scribbled down the order, noting how he watched her write with intense curiosity. "That'll be 12 credits. You can pay when you're done." "Actually," he said, reaching into his jacket pocket, "I prefer to pay now." What he pulled out made Zara's eyes narrow. It looked like a credit chip, but it was made of some strange silvery metal that seemed to pulse with its own light. The markings on it were definitely not standard Earth currency. "What is that?" she asked suspiciously. "Payment," he replied innocently. "This should cover the meal and provide a generous gratuity." Zara's protective instincts kicked in. She'd seen enough scammers and con artists working the station to recognize trouble when it walked through her door. This guy was clearly running some kind of fake currency scheme. It's probably targeting tired workers who wouldn't look too closely at unusual payment methods. "Sir, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but we only accept standard credits." "Here," she said firmly. "Real ones." His amber eyes widened in what appeared to be genuine confusion. "I assure you this is quite real. Perhaps your payment scanner simply needs calibration." "Our scanner works fine," Zara shot back, her voice rising slightly. Mrs. Chen looked up from the grill with concern. "Look, I don't know if you think I'm stupid or what, but I'm not falling for whatever scam you're trying to pull." The stranger's face fell, and for a moment he looked genuinely hurt. "I would never attempt to deceive you. I simply wished to purchase a meal." "It's with fake money," Zara said, crossing her arms. "Right. Let me guess. You need me to make change for that thing, and somehow my real credits disappear in the process?" "I don't understand," he said quietly, studying the strange chip in his hand as if seeing it for the first time. "This has always been accepted before." Something in his voice made Zara pause, seemed genuinely confused, not like the slick talkers who usually tried to run cons in the diner. But she'd learned the hard way not to trust unusual circumstances. "Look, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to ask you to leave," she said, trying to keep her voice professional. "Unless you have real credits, I can't serve you." The stranger stood slowly, pocketing the mysterious chip. For a moment, he just looked at her with those strange amber eyes, as if trying to memorize her face. "I apologize for any confusion," he said with that same formal tone. "Thank you for your time." He turned to leave, but stopped at the door and reached into another pocket. This time, he pulled out a standard credit chip and placed it on the nearest table. For the inconvenience, he said simply, and walked out into the busy corridor of the station. Zara stared at the chip he'd left behind. When she picked it up and checked the amount, her eyes went wide. It contained enough credits to cover not just a meal, but her entire week's wages. What the hell? She muttered, looking toward the door where the mysterious stranger had disappeared. Mrs. Chen appeared at her elbow, wiping her hands on her apron. "Strange boy," she commented. "Polite, though. Not many would leave money after being asked to leave." "Yeah, strange is right," Zara agreed, still staring at the credit chip. "Mrs. Chen, have you ever seen currency like this before?" she described. The silvery glowing chip the stranger had first tried to use. Mrs. Chen's eyes lit up with recognition. "Aya, that sounds like Corvinian platinum," the older woman said. "My late husband used to work the deep space trade routes. Those chips are worth more than most people make in a year." Zara's stomach dropped. "You mean it was real? Real and very valuable?" "The Corvinians don't usually trade with Earth stations directly. Too proud, they say." Mrs. Chen gave her a knowing look. "Maybe you should have taken a closer look before." Assuming the worst? As the evening wore on, Zara couldn't stop thinking about the mysterious stranger. She judged him based on his appearance and acted out of suspicion rather than curiosity. The generous tip he'd left suggested he wasn't. Angry about her reaction, but she still felt terrible about how she'd treated him. More puzzling was the question of who he really was. If he'd been carrying genuine Corvinian currency, he wasn't some random scammer. The Corvinians were known throughout the galaxy as a proud, advanced species that rarely interacted with humans. Their homeworld was rumored to be incredibly wealthy, with technology that made Earth's innovations look primitive. So what was someone with access to Corvinian currency doing in a rundown diner dressed like a vagrant student? As she cleaned up the last tables of the night, Zara found herself hoping she'd see the mysterious stranger again. Apology, at the very least. But more than that, she was curious about the story behind those unusual amber eyes and that formal way of speaking. When she finally locked up the diner and headed home to her tiny apartment, Zara Nova had no idea that her encounter with the mysterious stranger was about to change everything about her simple life. She couldn't have imagined that the man she'd dismissed as a scammer was actually Prince Dex Corvinian, heir to one of the most powerful empires in the known galaxy. And she definitely couldn't have predicted that he'd been just as intrigued by her fierce protectiveness and honest nature as she was by his strange behavior, in a life filled with people who treated him with automatic deference because of his title. Meeting someone who challenged him had been refreshing. As Zara drifted off to sleep that night, she wondered if she'd ever see those amber eyes again. Across the station in a luxury suite she didn't know existed, Prince Dex was wondering the same thing about her determined brown ones. Neither of them realized that fate was already weaving their paths together in ways that would challenge everything they thought they knew about love, loyalty, and the vast distances between the stars. 3 days had passed since the strange encounter at Luna's diner, and Zara couldn't stop thinking about the mysterious man with amber eyes. She'd checked and rechecked the credit chip he'd left behind, confirming it was genuine and worth exactly what she'd thought. The guilt of misjudging him gnawed at her during every quiet moment between orders. Thursday evening brought the usual crowd of station workers grabbing dinner after their shifts. Zara was refilling napkin dispensers when the diner's door chimed, and she looked up to see a familiar figure stepping inside. Her heart skipped unexpectedly. It was him, but he looked completely different. Gone were the wrinkled clothes and messy hair. Instead, he wore a simple but well-fitted dark sweater and clean pants. His hair was neatly styled, revealing the sharp angles of his face. She'd thought he was handsome before, now he was absolutely striking. He approached the counter with that same graceful walk. But this time he seemed more confident, less uncertain about his surroundings. "Good evening," he said, offering a small smile. "I was hoping you might have a moment to speak." Zara felt heat creep up her neck. "Look, about the other night, I owe you an apology. I was completely wrong about the currency thing, and I'm really sorry for assuming you were trying to scam me." His amber eyes lit up with surprise, and something that might have been admiration. You researched Corvinian currency? Mrs. Chen recognized it. She said it was worth more than I make in a year. Zara fidgeted with her order pad. I felt terrible about how I treated you. Please don't apologize, he said earnestly. Your caution was admirable. You were protecting yourself and your employer. That shows character. The way he spoke, so formal and thoughtful, made Zara study his face more carefully. There was something regal about his posture, the way he held his head. But his eyes were warm and genuine when he looked at her. I'm Dex, by the way, he said, extending his hand. I realize I never properly introduced myself. Zara, she replied, shaking his hand. His skin was surprisingly warm, and she noticed his palm had an unusual texture, almost like very fine scales. So, what brings you back? Please tell me you're not here for the meatloaf special again, Dex laughed, a rich sound that made something flutter in Zara's chest. Actually, I came to offer you a job. A job? Zara blinked in surprise. What kind of job? I'm working on a cultural exchange project, Dex explained, glancing around to make sure no one was listening too closely. I need someone to help me understand local customs, social interactions, that sort of thing. Someone with insight into how ordinary people live and work. Zara raised an eyebrow. That's a pretty vague job description. What kind of cultural exchange project? Academic research, he said quickly. I'm studying human social patterns for my thesis. The position would involve accompanying me to various locations, helping me observe and understand social dynamics. The pay would be quite generous. Something in his tone suggested there was more to it than he was saying, but Zara found herself intrigued despite her better judgment. How generous are we talking? Dex pulled out a tablet and showed her a number that made her eyes widen. It was more than she made from all three of her jobs combined, and he was offering it as a weekly salary. That's too much money for what you're describing, she said suspiciously. What aren't you telling me? You're very perceptive, Dex said. With approval, the truth is, my research requires discretion. I need someone who can think quickly, adapt to unusual situations, and maintain confidentiality. Your protective instincts and quick judgment the other night convinced me you'd be perfect for the role. Zara studied his face, looking for signs of deception. Instead, she saw something that looked like hope, as if her answer mattered more than just professionally. Where would this job take me? She asked. Various locations around the station, possibly some off-station travel. Nothing dangerous, he assured her quickly. I would ensure your safety at all times. The offer was tempting, more tempting than it should have been. The money alone would solve most of her financial problems and get her closer to her engineering dreams. But there was something else drawing her to accept, something about the way Dex looked at her like she was important. I'd need to give Mrs. Chen notice, Zara said slowly. Of course. Would 2 weeks be sufficient? You're really serious? About this completely serious? Dex leaned forward slightly. Zara, I know this seems unusual, but I have a feeling you're exactly what I need for this project. Will you consider it? Before she could answer, a commotion erupted near the kitchen. A drunk customer was harassing one of the other waitresses. Demanding free food and getting increasingly aggressive, Zara immediately moved toward the situation, but Dex was faster. Approached the belligerent man with calm authority. Sir, I think you've had enough excitement for one evening. Perhaps it's time to head home? The drunk man turned toward Dex, ready to start a fight, but something in Dex's posture made him hesitate. Without raising his voice or making any threatening gestures, Dex somehow commanded the space around him. The man mumbled an apology and stumbled out of the diner. How did you do that? Zara asked, impressed. Dex looked uncomfortable. I'm used to dealing with difficult people. Academic conferences can get surprisingly heated. It was a reasonable explanation, but something about his bearing in that moment had seemed almost royal. The way he'd handled the situation spoke of someone accustomed to authority, not a graduate student writing a thesis. So, he said, turning back to her with a slightly nervous expression, what do you think about the job offer? Zara made her decision impulsively, driven by curiosity and an attraction she was trying hard to ignore. All right, Dex, I'll do it, but I want a real explanation of what this project is about once I start. Relief flooded his features. Thank you, Zara. You won't regret this. As he prepared to leave, Dex pulled out another tablet and handed it to her. My contact information is programmed in there. There's also some preliminary material about the project. Review it when you have time. After he left, Zara examined the tablet more closely. It was unlike any device she'd seen before, sleek and responsive, with an interface that seemed almost intuitive. The technology was definitely more advanced than standard Earth equipment. The preliminary materials were interesting but vague, discussing cultural adaptation and social integration without much specific detail. What caught her attention were the subtle references to off-world perspectives and interspecies communication protocols. Zara, Mrs. Chen called from the kitchen. That boy is not what he seems. What do you mean? The elderly woman joined her at the counter, drying her hands on a dish towel. The way he moved when that drunk man caused trouble. That was not the movement of a student. That was someone trained in combat. Someone used to command. You think he's military? Zara asked. Maybe. Or maybe something else entirely. Mrs. Chen patted Zara's shoulder gently. Just be careful, child. Men with secrets are often more dangerous than they appear, even when they seem kind. That night, as Zara walked home through the station's dimly lit corridors, she found herself wondering what she'd gotten herself into. The job offer was too good to be true. Dex was clearly hiding something significant, and yet she felt drawn to both the mystery and the man himself. Unknown to her, several levels above in the luxury district, Dex was having a very different conversation. Your Highness, this plan is becoming too complicated, said Captain Myra Stellan, his longtime bodyguard and advisor. She'd been watching from the shadows during his diner visits, ready to intervene if necessary. Involving a local human in your mission violates multiple protocols. The mission requires me to understand human culture from the inside, Dex replied, though he knew it wasn't entirely true. Zara provides authentic insight I can't get from observation alone. The mission requires you to study humans, not employ them as companions, Mira said firmly. Your mother expects a report on human social structures, not news that you've become emotionally involved with a subject. Dex turned away from her knowing look. I'm not emotionally involved. Zara is simply an efficient research assistant. Of course, Your Highness. I'm sure the fact that you visited her workplace 3 times in 4 days is purely professional interest. Before Dex could respond, his personal communicator chimed with an incoming message from the Corvinian. Homeworld. The royal seal indicated it was from his mother, Queen Avalon. Status report required, the message read. Council grows impatient with extended cultural study. Arrange return for formal betrothal ceremony within 1 standard month. Dex stared at the message, his heart sinking. In his fascination with human culture and growing interest in Zara, he'd almost forgotten about the arranged marriage waiting for him at home. His mother had been patient with his academic pursuits, but royal duty would eventually supersede everything. Else, bad news, Your Highness? Mira asked, noting his expression. A reminder of obligations, he said quietly. It seems my time here is more limited than I thought. As he prepared for sleep that night, Dex found himself caught between 2 worlds. His duty as a prince demanded that he complete his studies and return home to fulfill his role. But for the first time in his life, he'd met someone who saw him simply as a person, not a title or a symbol of power. Zara didn't know he was royalty, didn't treat him with the automatic deference he'd known his entire life. Her fierce independence and honest nature fascinated him in ways he hadn't expected. The thought of leaving her behind and marrying a princess he'd never met felt suddenly unbearable. Princes didn't get to choose love over duty. Dex had always known that his personal desires would eventually have to yield to the needs of his people. The question was whether he could complete his mission and explore his feelings for Zara without compromising either his duty or her safety. Neither he nor Zara realized that forces beyond their control were already beginning to converge, and that their growing connection would soon be tested in ways that would challenge everything they believed about love, loyalty, and the vast distances. Between different worlds, 2 weeks into her new job, Zara was beginning to understand that nothing about Dex was quite what it seemed. His cultural research had taken them to art galleries where he asked questions no graduate student would need to ask, like basic explanations of human emotional responses to visual stimuli. His living quarters were in the station's most expensive district, which he explained away as research funding generosity. Most puzzling were the small moments when his carefully constructed persona slipped, the way he automatically expected doors to be opened for him, how he seemed surprised when vendors expected him to negotiate prices, the unconscious authority in his voice when he gave directions to service staff. But what really caught Zara's attention were the times when he forgot to hide his wonder at simple human customs, the delight on his face when she showed him how to properly eat pizza, his fascination with human music and the way people danced together, his careful questions about human courtship rituals, asked with the intensity of someone studying an entirely foreign species. "Dex," she said one evening, as they sat in a small cafe overlooking the station's central plaza, "can I ask you something personal?" He looked up from his coffee, which he still drank with careful precision, as if the act required conscious thought. "Of course, where are you actually from? And I mean really from, not some vague answer about academic exchanges." For a moment, his amber eyes showed something like panic. Then he set down his cup and studied her face with that intense way he had of looking at people. "Why do you ask?" "'Cause you act like someone who's never seen humans before," Zara said. "Gently, the way you watch people, the questions you ask, even the way you hold yourself. It's like you're pretending to be something you're not." Dex was quiet for a long moment, conflict clear on his features. "Would it matter to you if I was different than I appeared?" "Different how?" "Very different." Something in his tone made Zara's heart skip. "Are you in some kind of trouble? 'Cause if you are, I want to help." The genuine concern in her voice seemed to break something inside him. Dex reached across the table and took her hand, his unusual warm skin sending a shiver up her arm. "Zara, I need to tell you something, but I'm afraid it will change everything between us." Before he could continue, a sharp whistle echoed through the cafe. Dex's head snapped up, his entire body going rigid with tension. Across the plaza, a woman in dark clothing was gesturing urgently in their direction. "We need to leave," Dex said suddenly, standing and pulling Zara to her feet. "Right now. What's wrong? Please, just trust me." They hurried through the station's corridors, Dex leading with the confidence of someone who knew exactly where he was going. When they reached his quarters, Zara finally got her first glimpse of his real living situation. The apartment was enormous by station standards, filled with technology she'd never seen before. The furniture looked like it belonged in a palace, and the viewing window offered a panoramic view of space that was only available from the most exclusive levels. "Okay," Zara said, turning to face him. "I think it's time for that explanation." Dex took a deep breath, and when he spoke, his voice carried a different cadence, more formal and commanding than she'd ever heard from him. "My name is Prince Dex, Corvinian, heir to the Corvinian Empire. I came to this station to study human culture before my coronation, but I never intended to become emotionally involved with anyone." Zara stared at him, processing the words. "You're royalty. Alien royalty." "Yes, and you've been lying to me this entire time." "Not lying," Dex said quickly, omitting the truth. "Everything I've told you about wanting to understand human culture is real. I just haven't explained why it matters so much to me." Zara sank into one of his expensive chairs, her mind racing. "So when you paid with that Corvinian currency, you weren't some student with exotic money. You were using your own currency." "Yes. And the job offer, the research project. A way to spend time with you while fulfilling my actual mission." Dex knelt beside her chair, his amber eyes pleading. "Zara, please understand. I've never met anyone like you. The way you challenged me that first night, refused to be intimidated, protected what was yours. In my world, everyone treats me with automatic respect because of my title. You saw me as just a person." "Because I didn't know who you really were," Zara said, hurt creeping into her voice. "You let me think you were someone I could actually have a future with. Why can't you?" "'Cause you're a prince, and I'm a waitress from the lower levels." "'Cause your people probably have rules about that sort of thing. Because it's real life, not a fairy tale." Before Dex could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. The apartment's communication system activated, displaying an incoming message with official galactic codes. Your Highness, came a crisp voice. This is Admiral Thorn of the Corvinian Royal Fleet. You are ordered to return to the homeworld immediately. Your mother grows concerned about your extended absence. Through the viewing window, massive ships began appearing in the space around the station. Sleek, elegant vessels that dwarfed anything in Earth's fleet, their hulls gleaming with the same silvery metal as the currency Dex had tried to use weeks ago. They found me, Dex said quietly. Your own people? My mother sent them? No. I was supposed to complete my studies and return for my betrothal ceremony. He turned to face her, pain clear. In his expression, Zara, there's something else. I'm engaged to marry a Corvinian princess. It was arranged when we were children. The words hit Zara like a physical blow. You're getting married. It's a political alliance. I've never even met her properly. But royal duty requires it. And where does that leave me? Dex stood and began pacing, his royal training warring with emotions he'd never experienced before. I don't know. I never planned for this to happen. I never planned to fall in love with you. The words hung in the air between them, her heart racing. Torn between anger at his deception and the overwhelming realization that she'd fallen in love with him too. You love me? It's more than I thought possible, Dex said without hesitation. Zara, in my entire life, no one has ever seen me the way you do. It's not my title, not my wealth, not what I represent to my people. It's just me. The communication system activated again. Your Highness, you have 10 minutes to board the transport vessel. Any further delay will be considered an act of rebellion against the crown. What happens if you don't go? Zara asked. I forfeit my right to the throne. My people lose their heir, and the political alliance my marriage would secure falls apart. Potentially thousands of lives could be affected. Zara stood and walked to the viewing window, looking out at the imposing fleet surrounding the station. So you have to choose between duty and happiness. It's not that simple. It never is. She turned back to him, decision crystallizing in her mind. Dex, go home. What? Go home to your people. Honor your commitments. Be the prince they need you to be. I can't just leave you. Yes, you can, because that's what people do when they love someone. They make the choice that's best for them, even when it hurts. Dex crossed the room and took her hands in his. Come with me, to your homeworld. As what, your mistress? Your dirty little secret is someone I care about? I could find you a position in the royal court. We could still see each other. I'd watch you marry someone else and have royal children with her. No thank you. The finality in her voice seemed to break something in Dex. He pulled her against him, holding her tightly, as if he could somehow keep her with him through sheer force of will. I don't want to lose you, he whispered against her hair. You're not losing me. You're choosing your people over yourself. Yeah, that makes you a good prince, even if it makes you a heartbroken man. They held each other until the final warning came. Through the communication system, when Dex finally pulled away, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. If things were different, he began. They're not, Zara said gently. And we both knew this couldn't last forever, did we? Think part of me always knew you were too good to be real. Princes don't fall in love with waitresses, Dex. Not in the real world. Perhaps they should, he said quietly. The transport beam activated, bathing the apartment in soft blue light. Dex had mere seconds before it would pull him back to his ship. Zara, he said urgently, I want you to know that meeting you changed everything for me. You showed me what it means to be valued for who I am, not what I am. I'll never forget that. Neither will I, she replied, touching his face gently. I'll go be the prince your people deserve.